Hi guys, welcome back to my YouTube channel. In today's video, I'm going to show you I'm going to explain everything you need to know about this keyword in JavaScript. So what is the this keyword in the context of JavaScript? So imagine having a huge JavaScript object and you need to reference properties in the same object in 100 places. So your first thought would be to keep referencing the containing object using its name. So yes, this one works, but what if you need to change the object name? You now have 100 places to change. That's one reason we have this keyword in JavaScript. So we do have an example here. Let me zoom in. So you can see we have a person object with a name property and a value of John, an age with a value of 20. And then we have a function inside an object, which is called a method, that returns the details of this person. So you can see we are referencing person.name and person.age, years old. And then you still have another function that is getting the age. Maybe you want to do something with the age. So all these functions are just for illustration purposes. And then finally, we have another function to get the birthday age. So this is, we need to return the age plus 1 for the birthday. So the main use case of a method is that you need maybe to compute based on the properties in that object. All right. So instead of doing this, because you can see we have referenced the person object so many times. So we have the person here, the person here. So what if the person name changes and you have like 100 references for the same? So what would happen? You'd have to change on 100 places. So instead of doing that, we have another way here. So JavaScript has a keyword called this. It's a special keyword which gives us the current object in a given context. So by referencing this .name inside this function, this method inside the object, so whenever this function is called in the context of the object, this keyword refers to the object containing it. So in this case, this keyword will reference the person itself. So in this way, we can change. If we change the object name, we don't have to replace the name in many places. Also, we can use the call, apply, and bind methods. So to put it into perspective, I'll create something here like, so I'll create this, I'll call this an estate. So this one will be an estate. And this one is the entrance. So the estate has maybe different properties. We have the name, and then we have other stuff. But for instance, we have a new method. We can create a method to represent a method in a real entity. We can use something like an action. So let's assume in this scenario, we have an action of a police officer reporting about the state of the estate. So this is the police officer. So the action of the police officer reporting about the state of the estate is what we call an action. But in our object, we can represent this in a method. So let me just open VS Code and so that we can continue checking from there. So we can create our estate. We can give this name. My first estate is equals to an object. Then you have estate name, which is equals to maybe TWT, and then founded year, we can say 2000. And then here is where we have a method. We can call it report. Or we don't. So we have a method called report. And then we can say last checked so having this, so this is a function inside an object, and this function is called a method. So this method is for a police officer to report about the current state of the estate. So maybe we can return. So this is where this keyword comes into play. So we can say this dot name, which will reference my estate dot name. All right, was last checked on. Then you can say this dot last checked dot to, maybe you can use this dot last checked dot to date string, and then we can come here and console log my first estate dot report. So we are assuming this is a police officer who is reporting, and then we can see TWT was last checked on Saturday, and then maybe you have the weather raining. So this weather, maybe it's changing dynamically, but now the police officer has to be in the estate to check whether everything is all right. So all right. And then we can say, we can remove all this, and then we can work with simpler condition is, then we can just dump this dot weather. So we have assumed this is our estate, and inside our estate, we have a guard who does this action of reporting about the current scenario in the estate. So if we run this, you can see TWT condition is raining. So let's start with understanding how the this keyword is working. So we said whenever a this keyword is called inside an object, inside an object scope. So whatever you're calling a scope is because, as I am saying, we have an estate and we have a guard who is reporting in that estate. So the boundaries of the estate is what we call the scope or the context. So in JavaScript, we have different scopes. We have the global scope. This one is the global. We have the global scope, and then so we do have the global scope, and then we have the object scope. We have a function scope, function. So, and whatever I'm saying is that whenever we call a method inside an object through its scope, that this keyword refers to that object. So if you go back, you can see now report is able to get the value of this because we are calling it in the scope of the estate. So we are calling the estate dot report. So in other words, so what if we store the function declaration inside another variable? So we can say test report, can do that, is equals to my first estate dot report. So remember, we did not call the report function. We just passed in a reference to it. But what has changed here is that the execution of the function or the method report has changed. So let me just console log so that we can start from there. Test report dot or test report. Now we can call the method. So if we try doing this, we get undefined. So why is this? So we said we do have context. So initially when we do this, console.log my first estate dot report, we are calling the report in the context of the object. You can see we are scoping this report inside our estate. And by doing so, this keyword refers to the my estate object. So when we call the my estate and the report, this keyword refers to the my first estate object, and that's why we can access its properties. So we can access this dot name and this dot weather. But when we pass in that function reference, so what we are doing is that instead of now calling the reporting we want to report here, we pass it to something else. We pass it to another context, and then now it loses this keyword loses its previous object where it was created at. So now we moved out of the estate context, and now we are inside another context which is called the global context. And now this keyword will not refer to what was in the estate, but will refer to the global scope, right? Because yes, we created a reference, but now we are outside of the scope of the my estate, and then this keyword is unable to reference the object where it was created. So that's a brief introduction on JavaScript, this keyword. So we do have the table of contents. So what is this keyword? What is global context? Different places where this keyword can be used. This keyword in global context, this keyword in the object context, this keyword in event handlers, this keyword in constructor functions and classes, bind, call, and apply methods, and arrow functions and lexical binding, common pitfalls, and conclusion. So as I have said, for this keyword in JavaScript is a special keyword that refers to the context in which a function is executed. So the context that this function is being executed is in the my estate context, because we called it inside my estate. So we said my first estate dot report. So by the time we are calling the report function, we already know that this keyword already knows we are in my first estate. But if we come and pass the function to another variable, so we remove it out of the scope of my estate, by the time it gets, since it's out and we start executing it, it loses the scope of the my estate object, right? So this function, so this is a function reference, is outside the scope of the initial context where it was created. So the test report function now, yes, it refers to this method, but where is it executing? It is executing in the global scope. And what is the global scope? The global scope is this whole scope here in JavaScript, which contains methods, global methods like set timeout, we have set interval, and in case we are in the browser, the global refers to the window object. All right. So if we are outside the browser, if we are inside the browser, we are executing using the browser. The global context refers to the window object. And the window object is the object that is supplying all the variables, common variables like set, timeout. Actually, I don't know whether I can inspect here and go to JavaScript. I'd like to show you something. So if I go to the console and I can type console.log this, you can see this is a window object, and this object supplies so many important stuff. So we have alert, and something you might not have known is that you can do window, not even doing window, this dot alert. And then maybe I can say this dot alert, hey, and then we got the alert. So this alert is possible because the alert is attached to the window object in the browser. All right, so the window object supplies so many global stuff. Like we do have the animation frames, we have the clear intermediate, clear interval, clear timeout. We have so many that you might have the fetch function. So instead of calling the fetch function as it is, you can even call it from the this keyword. So in the context of the browser, the this keyword refers to the window. In the context of JavaScript, if I come here, in the context of JavaScript, so if in the context of JavaScript, we get an empty object because this one is not referencing the global object, it is referencing the current executing scope, which is the common JS does its own thing. But whatever you need to understand is, let me just create a function. Can call it my function, then now we do get the global Node.js object. So we have the fetch as well, but we cannot have stuff that are related to the browser like alert or all that, because now we don't have the browser. So let's continue. So what is the global scope? I have already said the global context. So we do have the global context refers to the outermost execution environment. And in browsers, it refers to the window object. It contains global methods like set timeout, set interval, and other methods like window.open. And in Node.js, it refers to the global, you see the global environments. It's basically the global, as I have shown you. And then in Node.js, we don't have the browser, so we don't have methods like, we do have the set timeout. What we don't have is methods like window.open. So let me edit this very fast. So we can say window.open. All right, so that's a basic introduction of JavaScript objects and this keyword. So as we can continue, we have already learned that this keyword is a special keyword that is used to reference the object in context. And then we do have two types of context. We have the window context, which is the one found in the browsers, and then the global environment or the global context that is found in Node.js. So the next thing we need to know is which are the places whereby we can call the this keyword and it can be used. So we just saw that you can use the this keyword in the global context, as I have shown you, and then we can use it inside object methods. So using inside object methods is like the previous example. So it's like the previous example whereby we have returning. So we can use the this keyword inside an object, and then we can use it to reference the containing context of the object. The next thing we can do is that we can use the this keyword in event handlers. So let me just show you. So in case we have a DOM element called a button, and then we can maybe have const button is equals to document dot get element by ID, maybe my button. So this one will help us get that element. Then if we add the event listener, so dot add event listener click, so so if you add the event listener, so you say this, so the this keyword here refers to the element that the event listener has been added to. So the this here will be the button. All right. So in event listeners, whatever is called, so if we had here like a span element, and then we added an event listener for the click, then this keyword inside the callback function will be the span itself. All right. So we can also use it inside constructor functions and classes, and then manually bound functions like bind, call, and apply. We'll look at this in the later section. And also we can use it in arrow functions. So each place changes what this means. This is the most important concept to understand, that whenever this keyword changes depending on where it's being called. So if you are calling it in a function, it will be different from when calling it in an object or something of that sort. So let's look at this in depth. So we'll start with the global context. In the browsers, as we said, the console log dot this in the global context, meaning in the outermost context. So this is if this is our global, then calling it inside here with no other context, it will refer to the window in the browser, and then it will refer to global in Node. All right. Then we can continue in Node.js. It will return to the global, the top level object. So at the top level of the node module, this does not refer to global, but refers to the module.exports. And then inside regular functions, it defaults to a global object. This keyword in an object context, so we already saw this, is that when this keyword is used in an object context, it refers to the object itself. So by doing this .name, we are actually doing person.name. So here this refers to the person object because the function was called as a method. But if we extract the method, as I showed you, now the reporting officer is not in the estate, so they are not able to. This, which should refer to the estate, will now refer to the global because it doesn't know which context it is bound to. And as I have shown you, is that if we use this keyword in an event handler, the element itself is referenced by this keyword. So that's what you already need to know. And then finally, usage in arrow functions. So whenever you use the arrow functions, so arrow functions do not have their own context. What does they do? They inherit context from the parent. So if I have const person is equals to, then you have a name is John, an age of 20. So if you have a function greet, which is a function. And then you can say, you can return this dot person is this dot age years old. So you have said whenever the this keyword is used in an arrow function, since an arrow function does not have its own context, it inherits from the parent. This one will not inherit the context of the person. It will inherit from the global. So if we call person.greet, we get undefined because now this here is referring to the global object. So we are in this context, but now since we are using an arrow function which does not preserve its own context, or it's not bound to the context of the object calling it, it inherits. So it will inherit from the global scope or the global environment. All right, so use regular functions if you want this to refer to the element. So in most cases, if you want to do work with this, use the function declaration syntax. So the this keyword in constructor function in classes. So whenever you have a constructor function, this keyword refers to the object itself. So you can see now, if we create a new car using the function constructor, the constructor function, this now is used to initialize the data passed. So this will come and initialize the make to Toyota. All right, and same scenario to the classes, whereby if we have a method called speak inside a class, this keyword references the class instance itself. And then in both cases, this refers to the newly created instance. So what about the bind, call, and apply methods? So the call method and the apply method are used. So the call method are used to attach the this keyword to an already existing object. So you can see this constant person doesn't have a method of greet. So to call a method in an object which was not initialized with it, or to attach it, this will essentially call. So if you say greet.call the person, so greet will go to the person and grab the name and call it and return it to you. All right. And then we have another function called apply. So apply does the same thing as the call, whereby you call the function you want to apply, and where you want to apply it, I want to apply it to the person, and then you get the result back. So these are not commonly used, but you can read more about them. So we have a very nice function called bind. So if you remember, so if I can copy paste here, so you have a function called greet. So, and then you want to get another function that is aware of the this context. So you remember how we had an issue. So to bound, that's when you have bind. So to bound a function or a method to a context or an object context, we can use the bind, and then this function will be aware of the this keyword. So we used greet.bind the person, and then if we call that function, we get the bound this, and then when we console log this.name, we get the name. So whatever this is doing is that, if you remember when we had an issue with a function not having the this keyword because it's outside the scope, we can bind it to a certain object, and then the this keyword will always work. So finally, we talk about arrow functions and lexical binding. So arrow functions do not have their own this. They inherit it from the surrounding lexical scope, as I did show you here about arrow functions. And I did an example, so this one won't work. And you can only use arrow functions for callbacks where you want to inherit the this, not object methods. All right. And then finally, we talk about common pitfalls. So the first pitfall is that do not touch a method unless you bound it to that specific function. So bounding means attaching and saying that this keyword belongs to this object no matter what. I showed you this during the first few steps of the tutorial, whereby if you create a variable and assign it a method that is inside an object, that method loses its scope, and whenever you come to call it, this keyword now refers to, it's being called in another context such that it's now like being called outside the estate, and whatever it can reach for is the global context. So we are calling it here, maybe it doesn't have reference to the this, doesn't know what this is, and it falls back to the global context. So about using arrow functions as method, as I said, arrow functions inherit, they don't have their own scope. They inherit from the parent, and then the parent of this method is the global scope as well. And then as a conclusion, this changes depending on how a function is invoked. And in object methods, the term this refers to the object itself unless the method is detached, as I showed you, whereby you assign a variable to a method and then you detach it from that object. And then arrow functions inherit this and should not be used for methods. So these ones inherit and they should not be used for methods because of the kerning behavior. And then finally, use bind, call, or apply to control the context of this. And that's it, guys. Finally, follow for more. Make sure you subscribe to the YouTube channel, and I'd love to hear your comments and thoughts. Thank you.